Welcome back. In this last section, we're going to be talking about services, one of which will allow us to get rid of this array of data we're storing right here in our page and instead pull it from an API. So here you might see a sample URL that we might call out to products.json, which will return us a JSON array of all of our products which we want to load in our store controller. So what does that code look like? As I mentioned, we need a service. Angular comes with a bunch of services built in which you can use to give your controller additional functionality. You can do things like fetching JSON from a web service using the HTTP service. You can also log out messages to the JavaScript console with the log service. Or you can filter out an array with the filter service. As you might have noticed, all these services begin with a $sign. That's because they're built-in services with Angular. The HTTP service is the one we need to use to get that JSON data from our server. We can do this by using the HTTP method as a function with an options object, like you see here, sending in the method and the URL. Or we can use one of the shortcut methods, using the get method, sending in a URL, and any additional query parameters by sending in a JavaScript object. Both of these methods return a promise. And if you're not familiar with promises, check out our jQuery courses on CodeSchool. A promise object allows you to do callbacks on it, like success or error, which you'll see in a minute. One nice feature of the service is that if we tell HTTP to fetch JSON, the result will automatically be decoded into JavaScript objects in arrays. Pretty nice. We need our controllers to tell Angular which services they need. To do this, we use a funky array syntax. First, in this array syntax, we specify the names of the services that our controller needs. These services become arguments in our controller function. Here we can then use $HTTP inside the controller. This way of specifying the different services our controller needs is called dependency injection. And if you needed more than one service, here's what that might look like. I know this looks a little funky. This dependency injection thing is a little weird, so let me see if I can try to explain what's going on here. When Angular loads, it creates something called an injector. When these built-in services load, they register with the injector as being available libraries. Then when our application loads, it registers our controller with the injector, telling it that when it gets executed, it's going to need the HTTP and log services. Injector says, cool. Then when our page loads and our controller gets used, the injector grabs the services that our controller needs and passes them in as arguments. That's called dependency injection because it's injecting the dependencies, in this case the services, into the controller as arguments. So here we are back in our store controller. And we need that HTTP service. So we use that weird array syntax and we specify HTTP there as a service it needs, and then we specify HTTP as an argument. Now we can use it inside our controller. So we'll write HTTP get, specify the URL to call. Now we need to tell it what to do when it gets the data back. So we'll write .success, send in a callback to success because it's going to return some data. And now we need to do something with that data. Really, we need to set it equal to this.products. But can we write this.products inside that callback? No, because this inside of that callback is the service, HTTP. So here we need to do something a little funky. We're going to create a variable called store, set it equal to this, and now inside of our callback we can write store.products equals data. This request might take a second, but our page isn't going to wait for it. It's going to go ahead and load. So it might be a good idea to initialize products to an empty array. That way when the page loads, there's no errors. Then later on, after we fetch the JSON, we can load that data into the products and the page will automatically get updated. Here you can see our page loading and our products getting loaded dynamically from a remote API. In addition to GET requests, HTTP can do things like post, put, and delete, and here's the syntax for that. It can also load any other HTTP method by using a config object, like you see here. You'll need some of these commands in the challenges, which I'm going to set you loose on. Complete those challenges, and I will see you in the outro video at the end of the course. Thanks for watching. The HTTP over here. Cool. I got it.